So I saw a question up on a forum that I regularly frequent, and I thought it was worth answering in a video. So this guy writes, his question is, how do you date when you absolutely effing hate yourself? And he says, I only have negative thoughts and I don't like me at all. I don't see why people like being around me. I'm not who I thought I was going to be, and sure, I can work on it. It's just not me. I don't know who I am, to be honest, or what I want. I feel like I used to know. Now it's just nothing matters. So I wanted to try to go through this a little bit and just give my honest, unedited thoughts. So to answer the main question, how do you date when you absolutely effing hate yourself? The reality is people that hate themselves still manage to get girlfriends and date all the time. I don't think it definitely doesn't mean you should do it, because obviously how you feel about yourself is going to determine your outlook on the relationship. It's going to determine how you are around that person, how you treat that person, how they're going to be taking you in. And overall, it's more often than not going to be a negative experience. So you can do it, but it's not a high recommendation. That said, he mentions that he has negative thoughts and doesn't like himself at all. I don't know how old this guy is, but I can assure you that a good portion of people, particularly men, definitely go through phases where they're constantly having negative thoughts. And there are times where you may not like yourself for whatever reasons, okay? I do want to put out a few things though. So for starters, there's obviously the side where you might be going through some kind of depression and that can result in negative thoughts. But I do want to highlight other things that can contribute to you having negative thoughts, okay? The first one, believe it or not, is diet. I have found that a lot of times if I'm eating fast foods or things that aren't really good for me, sugars and things and high intake of salt can actually throw off the chemical balance in you to where it can result in you being moody, being anxious, and having negative thoughts about yourself. There's a whole documentary called Super Size Me. This guy did years ago where he ate nothing but McDonald's for 28 days straight. And by the end of it, aside from his health being completely physically out of whack, he also said he was experiencing headaches, moodiness. He was really mean towards his girlfriend. Like, a lot of that stuff came up in part because the diet he was eating was resulting in him having all these mood swings and emotional flip-ups about him that he did not anticipate, okay? So recognize, I don't know if you're a guy that eats out regularly, but you might want to start cutting back on the kind of food that you're eating if you're eating out a lot, and really focus on like having a better diet at home, because that actually will take away a lot of negative feelings about yourself, because you'll feel better about yourself for one, and also the chemicals in your head and in your brain won't be leaning towards a more negative slant, okay? So that's the first thing. Also, another thing that can lead towards negative thoughts is honestly how we're brought up in society. Really, if you ever notice when people get together to talk, next time do this. When you're with a bunch of friends, notice the majority of the conversation and what it's being talked about. Because most people, if you get into a circle with them and you start having conversations, most of it's negative talk. Think about people, oh, how's your day at work today? Oh, the boss did this and that. Oh, how's your relationship going with your girlfriend? Oh, this girl, she said this thing to me and she made me so mad, blah, blah, blah. Like, most people have a negative slant. And the reason that is because it's in our society, it seems very easy to start off a conversation by talking about something that's negative that people can then jump onto and then add their own negative 2 cents about some negative experience that they had. So over time, we just learn to already have negative things going on in our lives, or focus on the negative things and have negative thoughts that we can then dispel to other people as a means of bonding. But inadvertently, it also makes us constantly think negatively about anything that we're doing. So you may need to consider who you're around, what kind of conversations you've been having, and then see if that's a way that you could start looking at that to try to get that out of your life, so you're not having as many negative thoughts by having to hold on to them to have a negative conversation with somebody else later. Continuing on, he says, I don't see why people like being around me. So this is the part where, unfortunately, this means that your reality of yourself can be skewed, because a person that's constantly having negative thoughts will ask these kind of questions. Why do people want to be around me? Why would this girl want to date me? But you got to understand, your reality of yourself is one reality, and it's not always the correct reality, because the fact that you have friends around you, the fact that you have people that want to hang out with you on a regular basis, that means that they're seeing stuff in you that you're either not able to see, or you're able to recognize it, but you're highlighting so much of the negative stuff that you're not aware that the positive stuff you have going on about you are the things that people actually gravitate towards. So this is where it starts to be good to analyze yourself and recognize that obviously there's a lot of negative self-talk going on inside you. And hey, I can relate. Back in my day, in my early 20s, my late teens and stuff, when I wasn't having a lot of dating success, I was really trying to figure out who I was and I couldn't figure it out at the time. I had a lot of negative self-talk. Not anything on the verge of leading me towards depression, but I definitely started to recognize, hey, you know what? I have a lot of negative thoughts about myself. If I was a friend of mine and my friend was talking to me the way that I talk to myself, would I want to continue a friendship with that person or would I want to kick them out of my circle? And so what I had to start doing, this is what worked for me, okay? So you can take this to heart. This is what worked for me, is that once I was able to recognize just how often I was doing negative thoughts, I had to figure out a way to get them out of my head. And so I literally took like a week. I took a week where I would start to really focus on thoughts that I had. And I don't think people consciously do this enough, where they actually take the time to say, hey, you know what? Let me really analyze the thoughts that I'm having about myself. Let me figure out when somebody's talking to me and I want to respond back and the thought that I have is something negative. So for example, somebody comes up to you and says, hey man, I just want to say you did a really good job on this, whatever project you're working on. If your first thought is to be like, I mean, I did an okay job, but I mean, it wasn't really that great and I could have done better, yada, yada, yada. Boom, right there, you have a negative thought about yourself that nobody but you initiated. And you'll start to recognize that that happens a lot. People say nice things about you. Do you turn them away? Do you try to deflect that compliment into something negative? If you notice that stuff and you start to analyze it, you'll start to see that you are your biggest enemy. But that also means that you have the power to change that. But in order to change that, you got to add in new thoughts, because you basically got to replace your old thoughts with new thoughts. So this is what I did. Anytime I would start to recognize that I had a negative thought, I would give myself 5 positive comments. And they don't have to be all that inspiring. They don't have to be vaguely different. For example, if I thought to myself, oh man, I did a really crappy job today on something, I would have 5 thoughts ready to go. I'm great. I'm awesome. I have friends. Women love being around me. And I have great handwriting, I guess, or something like that. Like I'd give myself 5 various compliments. And I would do that every single time. And in the beginning, it's going to be hard because you're not going to be aware of how many negative thoughts come through. But you'll start to, if you're doing this as a conscious exercise, you'll start to notice it. You want to put the kibosh on it. And anytime you have a negative thought, you will start saying 5 positive things. It could be something simple. Like I said, I'm great, I'm wonderful, I'm awesome, I'm superb, I dress great. Like something like that. And you do that every single time. And I started doing that at the age of 25. And by the time I hit 30, I felt immensely better about myself. And even if I had occasional negative thoughts here or there, my overall sense of self was not negative because I knew that I had greatness about me. Also, I had to start recognizing that, again, like I said, your reality of yourself is not the only one. So if I myself would have a negative thought about myself, but there were like 4 or 5 other people around me that were complimenting me, that were laughing with me, that were having a good time around me, that were inviting me to things, this let me know that, okay, this is a moment where I have to trust these other people's realities, because for whatever reason, I'm having this negative view of myself, but these other people and their reality of me is such that I'm actually a great person to be around and that they enjoy my company. So let me err on the side of that. And sometimes you'll have to go out of self to those other examples that prove that you are actually somebody that is worthy and that is having a positive effect on others, so you won't be so stuck in your head about the negative. Okay? So that's a little exercise you can try. Just every time you hear a negative comment in your head, try to think of 5 little short positive things, and hopefully over time, you'll start to actually believe those things. Because what's happening now is this: you've been giving yourself negative talk for so long that you feel like a crappy person. And again, in terms of your relationship with girls, I know for me, when I was in that space thinking, oh, I'm too weird, no girl's gonna like me, I'm too skinny, I'm not attractive, I'm this and that, I wasn't getting any girls. And then as I started to say, hey, you know what, wait, I have women friends, let me start with them. So I have women friends, I know I can talk to women, I know that I'm a gentleman, I know that I'm gonna show kind and careness to them. As I started giving myself positive notes about my interactions with women that I currently knew, and then start to realize, like, wait, I really actually am a great guy. Then over time, I had more confidence that I would actually be a good partner for somebody because I was telling myself all these positive things. And that's when my dating life really started to take off. Aside from obviously learning some tips and techniques and stuff like that, which you can learn online, just basically anywhere. But the inner part of really being confident in yourself, that you can actually attract a woman and then have her want to be in your good graces, that's something you're going to have to start with by telling yourself, okay? If you don't have any examples of that, if you don't have any women that are after you or like you or this is that, then that means that there's other stuff to work on. And this is when, things like therapy come into play and talking to somebody, a psychiatrist or stuff like that. But it really does start with your own self-talk. You can go to a psychiatrist all day, but if you get to the end of the session and then you go home and you're still talking negative stuff to yourself, then you're not going to be helped. So you have to really, again, be very, very conscious and make a conscious effort to speak positively to yourself. Then he says, I'm not who I thought I was going to be, and sure, I can work on it. It's just not me. I don't know who I am, to be honest. I'll be real with you, guy. We all go through that, okay? And this is not to lessen how you're feeling about yourself, but this is to let you know that this part of the journey is very normal. There's going to be any point in your journey where at some point you're going to be like, I don't know the next step. And you know what? You might get to the point where you decide what you want to do and you get really successful at it and you're like the best at it ever. But then after a while, you might get tired of doing that thing and then you'll be right back to, crap, what do I do now? I don't know what I want to do. What's my next interest? Where am I going to go with this? Because life is a journey and it's one that changes quite frequently. So it's not like you're going to figure out the thing you want to do and then do that for the next 40 years. Chances are you'll find something you like, a passion maybe, and then you'll do that thing for a little while, and then you'll probably burn out on that thing, or you want to elevate it to the next level, at which point you'll do something else, okay? So don't fall into the trap of, I gotta figure out who I am and what I'm gonna do, because you're gonna always be doing that. Even when you find a thing you wanna do, you're gonna be trying to figure out how to do it better, how to do it more effectively than the next guy, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, okay? It's a journey that happens until we die, okay? So this is not to say that this isn't to say that how you're feeling about this is invalid, okay? Because it is a definite thing where you start to feel like, I don't know my next step, I don't know what I want, I don't know what I want to do, okay? You right now have things that you're good at, you have passions that you're probably invested in, you have hobbies that you're good at. These things can be things that you can use to start as a starting off point to leading towards a bigger thing you want to do, And whatever you have to offer to the world, whatever you're doing right now that you think might not be a big deal, people need that thing. Or maybe you need that thing to be able to, really feel like you're being your true self, okay? But you are valid, you have worth, and it's worth exploring those things and recognizing that if there's parts in your journey where you're not quite sure of what's going to happen next, that's perfectly okay. I've been doing these kind of videos for years and, doling out advice. And there's still times where I'm like, crap, like, what is the next iteration of this thing? What do I want to do next? Is the advice I'm giving out great for guys? And could I be doing better? What things do they need? Do I want to do this anymore? Like, I've had those kind of thoughts plenty of times where I'm just like, I'm stuck. I don't know what to do now. And sometimes it just means I got to sit there for a few weeks and wait for it to come to my head. Sometimes it means consulting with other people to really figure out, hey, I don't quite know where I want to go next, but like, what do you see in me that maybe could be a thing that I could work on and do? Don't just leave this to yourself, okay? And that's the last thing I want to say too, is that this is not a journey you have to go on alone. I'm an introvert, and even me, I have people that I can go to talk about various things. If I get lost or I'm like, don't know where I'm going, I can talk to relatives, I can talk to people that are in my space, I can talk to, other successful people or people that are trying to get themselves off the ground and see what they're struggling at. And maybe I can help them in some way. But like, don't think you have to go at this alone. Obviously, I saw this on a forum that I frequent, so you can go to forums and talk to other people that are in your situation, but don't think that you got to be alone in this, okay? Other people are going to be out there that are willing to help you, that have been where you are, and ultimately want to see you do well. Because we don't want to see you harm yourself. We don't want to see you do anything that makes you really feel like you're such a burden that you got to like be out of this world, because that is not ever true, okay? So that's just my 2 cents. Hopefully, if anything, making this video at least makes you feel a little bit better about the fact that somebody out there feels as though you have worth, you have value, and that you are ultimately somebody that can provide for this world and also be a benefit, not just to the world, but to yourself and to those that care for you, okay? But in reference to the dating thing, you need to really, it's not that you can't date, but you really need to figure out these things and get them situated, because it's going to be so much better for you to date once you've kind of, at least nothing else, become more confident, become less anxious, become a more positive person. Because if you're dating a woman, I'm going to tell you now, as negative as you think you are right now, women out there have so many doubts, so many anxieties about things, so many, other situations that they have to go through. And so it's going to really be beneficial to them to have you being a guy that can at least bring a little bit of positivity to her world. If that's not where you're at right now, then put off dating for a little bit and just really focus on getting yourself to where you got to be. But recognize, guy, regardless of when you feel like you get there, you right now as yourself already have worth. And that, my friend, is a very, very good thing.